Well, good evening, everybody. We're so excited to have you here in our PodMed series, PodMed 101 series with our fourth year medical students. They are 2 weeks away from graduate, or excuse me, 2 months. I don't want to give you extra credit, 2 months away from graduation. So they are eager to share their perspective with you all. I'm Carla Rodabaum. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management and Student Services at the college, and we're joined by Angela DeSabels. Angela is our Associate Director of Enrollment Management at the college. I want to note that this is an experience where our fourth year students will be talking really about the clinical side of things, what their clinical experiences were like as a third year student at Cleveland Foot and Ankle Clinic in our local rotations, and then beyond at their externship. So we'll focus on the clinical side of things, but I want you to feel free to ask any questions that might come up. You can feel free to do so just through the meeting here, or if you feel more comfortable typing them in on the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable doing, we're happy to answer them. So I'll start out, and I might ask our students, if they don't mind, I'll have our student panelists introduce themselves, maybe tell a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from, where you went to undergrad. And Diamond, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you.
That's fine with me. So hi, everybody. My name is Diamond Brown. I'm a fourth year student at Kent. I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee, so I am a Southern girl. Found my way up to Cleveland, Ohio, shockingly. I went to undergrad at Barry University, and then I finished up at Shawnee State in Southern Ohio. And that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Diamond. Paul, do you want to go next?
Sounds good. Hey, everyone, I'm Paul. Originally, I'm from New York, kind of hoping that I venture back that way after school, but we find out next week. And I did my undergrad at Notre Dame.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Chloe, you're next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe. I am from a super small town in Alaska, and I did my undergrad many moons ago at Colorado State.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. And Juhi?
Hi, guys. I'm Juhi Patel. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I did my undergrad at Loyola, and I'm kind of hoping to end up back in Chicago. So let's see.
Great. Great. And then last but not least, Amelia.
Wait, hold on. Let's see if this works. There we go. My name is Amelia. I just finished putting my, or giving a bath to my 2-year-old, and now I'm getting ready to put her to sleep. So this is Leilani. Can you say hi? Hi. Okay. And I am trying to keep track of the questions and get a toddler ready. I am from New York and Brazil originally. I did my undergrad at Cornell University, also many moons ago. I graduated back in 2012. So a little bit of, you know, other kind of an alternate path here. And yeah, excited to answer some questions.
Great. Well, thank you. As I mentioned, this might focus a little bit more on the clinical side of things, but feel free to come at us with any questions for our fourth year students. Thinking about the clinical side of things, our students, for the most part, really engage in clinical experiences once you begin third year. I was wondering if somebody would be able to handle that first question, talk about, you finish boards and then you essentially start clinic the next day, in some cases, even a little bit before. Would anybody be able to talk a little bit about the schedule of a third year student at Kent State?
Yeah, I can take that one if that's okay. Sure. I don't know if anyone was going to answer that, but so when you finish boards, you take it that first week of June, like last week of June, first week of July, and then that's also your first clinical month for third year. And depending on what schedule you get, everybody's broken down into groups, and then each group is allocated a specific location per month. And some of them are 4-week rotations, some of them are 5-week rotations. It kind of just depends what you get. But regardless of where you end up, that first month, there's always fourth years there. So they help you transition in. So you learn a lot of the skills you need, your second year, pod med skills, surgical skills, stuff like that. And then you start to implement them in your practicals and your exams. But once you get into your rotation, fourth years kind of take the rein and they help guide you. And transitioning into a third year to a fourth year, they really help you, hey, remember this mnemonic, remember to set this up, remember to ask this, stuff like that. And I feel like that really makes an impression on the third years because we pay it forward. And then as new fourth years, we do the same for our younger classmen.
Great. Thanks, Juhi. Would anybody be able to talk about what kind of rotations you see as a third year student?
I can take that. So to bounce off what Juhi said, so as a third year, you have typically clinic in the morning, and then you have a lecture in the evening. So some of the clinics that we do, we have a VA rotation that you have for both your third and fourth year. We have the Midtown and Independence Clinic. That is a clinic where most of our professors actually work, and they train us on different skills as far as injecting, debriding nails, things of that nature, procedures, how to work up a patient. And then we also do rotation as far as internal medicine. So some of the hospitals around Cleveland and Cleveland area, we get matched with, a couple of doctors, and they, tour us around, see us, how do we see patients inpatient, some more clinical skills. Some of us was able to do ER rotations and have a lot of exciting different things, there. Some of us also get to do different specialties like trauma or vascular. And then we also do a surgical skills month. So we're learning how to suture, learning how to scrub in and out of the OR, things of that nature that help us when we are fourth years. And then we also have 1 month of a surgical rotation. So we get paired with some of our professors and other attendings around Cleveland, and we're scrubbing in the cases with them. Some of us got the chance to do skin to skin, our first surgery, third year. A lot of us get to help assist and work as scrub techs and everything, just to learn the process and how to be in the OR, how the OR culture is and some of the procedures. So when we get out fourth year to extern, we're ready to, to rock and roll. So that's some of the clinical things we do as a third year student.
Oh, that's great. I think a lot of people
You know,
don't.
if I add something real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Carla.
ahead, Amelia.
I was going to say a couple things that are going to be different for you guys compared to what they were for us. They have now changed it, so now there are 2 months of surgical rotation instead of just the one that we had. So that is a plus for you guys. And now there is also going to be a 1 month wound care rotation as well. And that's also a big plus. Wound care is something really big in podiatry, and it's a really good skill to have going out into externships. So those are just a couple of the things that are different now from what Diamond said compared to what we had. We did not have a standalone wound care rotation. We only had 1 month of surgical training. So.
No, it's a great point. I think a lot of people would be surprised about the amount of surgical experience you get as early as third year. So that's great to highlight. Diamond, you spoke about this briefly, and Chloe, I'm wondering if you could expand on something for me. The college does own and operate its own clinic, the Cleveland Foot and Ankle Clinic, with a couple different locations. Chloe, do you mind talking a little bit about the clinic and how you work with your attending physicians in that environment?
Absolutely. So there are 2 locations. One is in the school itself, and then one is in the Midtown area in Cleveland. So you get to see a pretty diverse patient population. We work closely with the various teachers, attendings, professors that have taught you in lecture. Each one has their own style, their own preference, which really gets you ready for when you go out on externships, and things are just a smidge different when you compare the different attendings you'll work with. But you spend a lot of time doing a variety of things. You can do simple diabetic foot exams, or you could be doing procedures. My first month at Midtown as a third year, I helped one of the attendings numb the patient. So got to draw out the local, got to inject the patient, and then we did an extensor tenotomy. We did it percutaneously, and that is kind of terrifying when you just learned about something like that. But the attendings are there literally to guide you. They're standing next to you, but they're letting you do it. They're reassuring you as you reassure the patient. I am very thankful for the time that we've had. Some of my months, I even split. So I was at Midtown 1 month, and then I split my time and drove to the Independence Clinic too. There's a lot of wound care. There's a lot of in-office procedures. There were pretty standard things, did some gait analysis. So it's very diverse what you'll expect to see.
Diamond, I think you mentioned this, some of the cases that you were able to see as a third year. Does anybody have a crazy case that you saw as a third year that you might want to share? Something interesting that you didn't think you were going to see as a third year student, but really intrigued you?
Yeah,
I will take this one real quick and then I'll let Paul go ahead. I'll let you go, Paul. But my first surgical week, I was in Akron, Akron General, and I scrubbed into a pilon fracture, which is supposed to be like the most craziest procedure, you know, that you known to man in our field, like the most complicated. And I was like, what? I am not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. And the residents there was like, were so nice to me, and the attending as well. Make sure they went over some of the x-rays and things, because I'm a third year. I have no idea, how to fix this. What is the protocol? What angle do I need to be at? What do I need to retract? I didn't know any of this. So as a third year going in, I was like mind blown that was like my first case to scrub into day one. So that was really cool. I was there longer than what I should have been. I was there 8 hours. I was only supposed to be there for 4 hours, but I was like, I'll stay because I don't know if I'm going to get this experience again. So really worthwhile.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Paul?
yeah, I was gonna say actually the very first case that I got to scrub third year as well. It was a fairly intricate case. So it was an IM nail, which is a nail that's driven from the bottom of the heel basically up through your tibia and your lower leg, and that's to fuse the ankle. And it had been done in, I think it was Jordan or some other country, like however many years ago, and it just had failed because there were issues with the way that I was put in. It just didn't hold up over time. So for this case, which again, it's my first time ever scrubbing, ever really being in the OR, except for viewing one other case. In my mind, I'm just trying not to touch anything that I shouldn't be touching. I'm really trying my hardest not to do anything stupid. And, we're taking out this nail, which they didn't have the proper equipment to get it out. So they kind of had to improvise. And then after that, they put on an external fixation frame on the leg. And, just while all these different things are going on, there's, a couple other smaller things going on with that. The two attendings that I was with for this case they were great, like from start to finish, and how, understanding they were and how helpful they were with teaching, but also with really letting me do a lot in my first case. So that was really a really cool first experience.
No, that's great. Thank you. Any other cases that anybody wants to toss out there before we move on?
Yeah, I had a really cool case, my first surgical experience, and that was a leopard procedure. So for those of you that don't know what that is, that's where they like realign the metatarsals, and it's to correct met adductus. I did not expect to see met adductus my third year. Like I was hoping for some ankle fractures, maybe a couple HAV, just kind of get my bearings. But here it is, first case, first rotation, get thrown in. And that was very cool to see. But it's like Paul said, initially as a third year, you're just trying not to like be noticed. You're trying to not touch anything that you're not supposed to touch. You're not trying to break sterile. You're doing your best to just be helpful and less intrusive as you can be, because you're there to observe and understand what it's like to be in the OR initially. And I think that's what third year was for me, is like learning what I will be doing in the future and kind of being an observer. And then fourth year, I felt way more comfortable and I was in it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Juhi. One thing that came up earlier is, in addition to all your clinical and surgical experience as a third year student, you have to take classes too. So you are still learning and taking classes and quizzes and tests in addition to all the clinical responsibilities you have. So how does one manage it all? How do you make time for the clinical stuff and then hitting the books when you have to?
So no one's gonna ever lie to you guys and tell you it's easy. If anyone ever tells you that this is easy, they are lying to you, and you just ignore any advice they try to give you. It's hard. It's really hard. Yes, baby. Mommy got that. It's hard. It's really hard. And so, there's a lot of different tactics that people go. Some people just kind of wait until the weekend and just kind of like cram through all of the classes that they have to at that point, because they just don't have time during the week. Some people try to like do both and try to like stay up on the classes, because that way they don't fall behind. And it really comes down to how much you've practiced your studying skills in your first and second year. I found that the people who really honed in on like, this is how I study best first and second year, and really learned how to learn the information and not just memorize things for an exam, those people were really successful third year. Because at that point, all you have to do is keep doing the same things that you were doing first and second year, with just a little bit more stress, but it's basically the same thing. You're not reinventing the wheel here. I found that the people who, they were just memorizing facts for an exam for first and second year had a really hard time now, third year, because there's too much between clinic and class. Like you don't have time to memorize as much. And so you need to actually like understand the material, and it's a different level where now, the questions aren't just, basic, pick this answer. They're very clinical, and it's a whole clinical scenario, and which of these is the best option for this patient, and kind of understanding the nuances of that. And so I think really making sure that first and second year, you fully understand how to have good study structure, really sets you up for success for third year. But it is difficult. I don't think anyone had an easy time third year. A lot of us struggled, and you kind of go through it together and make sure you have a good group of friends, before third year starts. And at the end of the day, you're going to have easier rotations and harder rotations. Everyone does. And eventually everyone gets stuck having an exam cycle during a hard rotation. So you just kind of try to like do as well as you can during your easy rotations, so that when you get to the harder rotations, you can kind of cut back a little bit, because what else are you going to do?
Thanks, Amelia. That's a great perspective. I think when I think about third year, there's so much going on with clinicals and classes, and then we cram it into a shortened schedule just to make it even a little bit trickier. So right after third year, your third year ends right now at the end of February, early March. Going into fourth year, would anybody be able to talk about that start of fourth year? Why Kent State students get out a little bit earlier to begin externships? Does anybody want to tackle that question?
So the original reasoning behind it, I happened to be in a class or in a meeting the other day, and someone explained this, I think Dr. Caldwell did, was that we wanted students to have as much time as possible with externships, with potential residencies that you're going to apply for before January, when everyone is kind of doing interviews and figuring out their rank lists. Because after January, there really is no point. I mean, like, you can further your education, you can still learn, but at the end of the day, no one's going to rank you after January, because that's when rankings are due. It's the end. And so the original thought was that we wanted students to have as much exposure as possible to as many residencies as possible before January hit. And so that's why we used to start fourth year in March. My understanding is that now it's a little bit different. I don't remember what month they start anymore. And Carla, maybe you can explain a little bit better when they start now. But I know now we start a little bit later, but now you also have more clerkship experiences fourth year. So you'll still have the same, even though we start a little bit later, you'll still have the same or potentially more externship experiences as we did as fourth years, and still have plenty of time to see all the residencies that you want to see before you have to start doing rank lists and interviews and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, you explained that perfectly, Amelia. I think moving forward, I think students will get out still March or April to get as much exposure. So not cutting out externships month, but maybe decreasing some of the time you're spending in Cleveland. But I think the goal of fourth year is to give you as much exposure to different externship programs as possible. So just generally, could somebody talk about what is an externship program? What do you do? What's a typical day like? How stressed out were you?
Yeah, I can take that.
Thanks, Paul.
So an externship, it's kind of like a month-long interview almost with a program that you think you might be interested in for residency. And, that's one of the reasons why people schedule externships. I think there's kind of three main ones. You might pick a program because it's somewhere where you think you might be interested in going in the future, which I think is the main one. Number two would be maybe you've heard something great about that program. Like maybe you've heard they're great for pediatrics and you want that month of exposure. So you go to a program for a specific reason like that. Or number three might be maybe you want to take that opportunity to, go see somewhere in Colorado for a month because you've never been there, something like that. But basically, an externship is spending a month kind of being in the day-to-day life with the residents and the attendings at a specific residency program. So, in a day, you may be rounding on patients in the hospital that podiatry team is in charge of. You might be seeing some patients in clinic. And then also during those months, you get a lot of time spent in the OR working alongside the residents and the attending physicians. And then you also, Carla, asked, was it kind of how you feel about it or something? Or
Yeah, I think when you think about medical school, it can be daunting, but this is the first time you're kind of all out on your own across the country in unfamiliar areas, unfamiliar residents, residency directors. I feel like you're kind of always on a stage, ready to perform as an extern. And I wanted to know what that kind of experience felt like. Is it stressful? Is it exhilarating to finally be out there on your own? What does that feel like?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix, to be honest. I think that this is true of many people, but it's definitely true of myself. Before day one of anything new, I'm a little bit stressed out. It's natural. Every externship, whether it was my first one or my last one, before that first day, like before you've ever met any of those people, been in that hospital, know what to expect, you might be a little bit overwhelmed by it or a little bit anxious. But I do think that in my experience, whether it was school rotations or the externship rotations that I did, I think that everyone was very welcoming for day one. Like they know how to kind of put you in the right mindset of, listen, like, we know you're in unfamiliar territory. Let's show you the ropes. And I think that helps, A, ease your nerves a little bit, but B, it allows you to really pick things up quickly moving forward and make the most out of the month. And then I think with every day progressing from that point, you become more and more confident and more comfortable. And it really does become a lot more exciting and enjoyable kind of with each day, and as you get to kind of build upon your month.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Paul, for that perspective. Does anybody else want to share any perspective about your experience out there leading into externships? Any nerves, any excitement that you want to share?
I mean, absolutely terrified. Just absolutely terrified, right? Because you don't know. You don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know, like, hell, you don't even know if you're gonna show up to the right place, right? Like you're hoping that like nothing changes, because like these people are actual doctors, right? They're not just professors. They're not just sitting in an office. These are actual doctors, and sometimes things just happen. I've shown up to a hospital and texted someone like, "Hey, I'm here," and they're like, "Great, we're actually like 30 minutes across town the other direction, because whatever happened, and now we're rounding there first. Sorry, we didn't tell you. Our bad." Like, and that's just that's life. They got a last minute call, and unfortunately, you're the lowest person on the totem pole, so you get the last phone call, if a phone call at all, telling you, "Hey, everything changed." And so it's terrifying, and that's okay. Everyone is scared. Like all the rest of your co-externs, they're all just as scared as you are. Everyone is terrified about what's going on. No one has any idea how to do anything, especially just at the beginning. But it's really cool. It was really fun to meet people from other schools and kind of see, as much as we like to complain about Kent and, when you're going through it and everything sucks and life sucks and school sucks and everything is horrible. Once you're really out there and you see like, oh no, I actually am prepared. Like, there was a reason behind the things that we did at Kent. There was a reason why the professor taught this subject in this way. And there was a reason why these were the classes that were picked for them to teach us. And you really see that you actually do know a lot more than you thought. As much, again, as much as we like to complain, you really realize how well prepared you are, assuming that you put in the work, in your 3 years up to that point. But it can be a lot of fun. And honestly, I've also had programs that just, they weren't great. And it just kind of comes with the territory. Sometimes you just can't, people have bad days, people are human. And sometimes it just, you have a bad month, and it just is what it is. And you suck it up and you move on to the next one, and hopefully the next one is better. But I do think also that making sure you put in the effort and the research in your first 2 years to know the programs that you're going to. Don't just go because you heard, oh, this is like, I've heard through the grapevine, this is a good program, so I guess I'm going to try it out. Like, really do your research. I think that helps too. I think a lot of people got sucked into, my friend's cousin's brother told me that this was a good program, so I spent a month there, and you had no idea what you were getting yourself into. And sometimes you look into the good things, but a lot of times it's really helpful to kind of do that research and know what you're getting yourself into ahead of time.
That's great. Go ahead, Julie.
Oh, I was going to say, I wanted to add to what Amelia and Paul said regarding externships. And that is that almost every externship that I know of so far expects you to do a presentation, whether it's like during their academics or it's at the end of the month. There is a presentation incorporated in there. And it's not anything nerve-wracking. I would say like maybe your first or second one, it could be a little terrifying, if you're like me and you hate public speaking. But they give you a topic. Sometimes they let you pick a topic. Sometimes they will give it to you like the week before. So your third week there, they'll be like, hey, reflect back on a case or a clinical experience that you had during a month and present on that next week. So like your fourth week there. So it's always good to, be alert, be attentive, definitely like pay attention to your surroundings and your experiences. Because that may be asked of you to present on that. Other than that, I think what Amelia said was like really true. I went to a lot of externships out of the state, and I'm from Chicago, so I went out east too. And I got asked over and over again, like, what made you choose our program? Why did you come out east? Like, and luckily, like I had done my research, so I knew why I was out there. But these are questions that even residency directors or residents will ask to know, like, why were you interested in coming out all this way? You know, if your home isn't here, if this is not where you're from, you know. So I think those are good points that were brought up.
Oh, that's great.
I just want to add some things. So because our school, our class is so big, I think it's like 100 and plus more of us, we get split in different pods. So some of us start out, you know, immediately the first month of the clerkship, and some of us are back at course. I was one who had 3 months straight of course. So I was able to work a lot with the fourth years who was coming on their way back and just completing things and like teaching me, you know, this is things you need to know. Here is some presentations I've done. This is the way you should do it. And kind of like pump me up. So when I did go out, because I felt like I was delayed from some of the other students who's already went out on their clerkships, you know, been like 3 months out so far, I felt like I was behind, but they made sure I was prepared, made sure I was ready to, you know, not compete, but be just as good as a student that was out already for 3 months. Also, I would say the fact that our field is so small, everyone is interconnected. So I went to places that, you know, I thought no other Kent State student went, but my professor, you know, some of the attendings I, you know, worked with when I was in around Cleveland, knew the director there, went to class with them. So they're like, I already know you. I know you like reggaeton and dance hall. We're going to play this in the OR. So there was some experiences like that, you know, people know you before you get there. I was lucky enough. I didn't know some programs I went to. There was a Kent State student there that was there my third year who tutored me when I was a first year. And I was like, Jeff, like, you know, and it just make you feel good. Because a lot of times you see some of your, you know, co-externs, some of your co-residents, the field is so small. So even though you feel along around the first week, you start realizing like, oh, they're like family. You know, our field, every one of us get a residency spot. So we're not stressed about that. And it's more about, you know, learning while we're there. So like everyone said, the big thing I think I learned during like externship is that, you know, as we're working and doing things, life's still going on. So we miss birthdays, we miss holidays, we miss things like that. You know, it was COVID. A lot of us had funerals. We missed funerals. A lot of us got sick. And it was definitely a trying time while we were out clerking. But I feel like everyone was still on the same accord as far as, you know, students, you know, professors, everybody, attendings, docs. So I think it was definitely very interesting for us and the class above us because of the whole COVID thing while externing and trying to figure out places and things like that. But I feel like, you know, most of us, you know, still got through and went to most of the programs we wanted to and had really great experiences.
That's great, Diamond. Thank you. I think you touch on a few things. You have the ability to extern across the country. So you aren't necessarily limited to a certain area. And I know talking to a lot of you have been all over the country over the last several months. The other thing that you touched on is that you are externing with students from programs all over the country, from Shoal and Berry and Temple and Des Moines, and you get to know a lot of these great students from other programs as well. I want to ask maybe a more general question, but Chloe, maybe if you want to take this one, how prepared did you feel as a Kent State student going out to your externships? How did you feel you stacked up against your co-externs?
This, it was interesting. I have to say, like, one, I'd like to point out that you go out there thinking that you're competing with all these people, that the co-externs you have are your competition. It is not that way. You are all in it together. And when the days are long, and I tell you at some programs, the days are long. They're the ones that are there for you. We're buying each other coffee, we're supporting each other. So I don't want anyone to think that it's just like this cutthroat situation when you're just thrown out there. It's not. But I will say, I cannot praise this program enough because I felt very prepared. That was consistent in my reviews. So on every externship, they get to review you and they will not hold back. They're going to put what they really thought about you on some of those reviews. But one thing that I like to highlight is not just, preparing the OR, not with interpersonal skills. I think that Kent does that pretty amazingly, that we communicate a lot here. So people, I think, go out there, they're very normal, friendly, whatever. But something that I didn't expect was how well prepared we are in medicine. So for some programs, they actually medically manage their patients, and they care a lot about what you know medically. So not just podiatry, not just pre-op, but I had a couple programs sit me down and my co-externs down in front of a PowerPoint, and it was just, you had to rapid fire answer questions. And one program asked me, they're like, Chloe, why do you know so much medicine? And I'd like to thank Dr. Peerless for that. We do internal medicine rotations, but honestly, the credit has to go to Dr. Peerless. So there wasn't ever a time where I felt like I wasn't really prepared, because whether it be in the OR, whether it be in clinic, which I did get a lot of comments that Kent students, especially this year, really were well, they did really well in clinic, as well in the OR, but also just in being prepared for presentations. We do a practice presentation in one of our classes where we have to create one as a group, and then just interpersonal skills.
That's great, Chloe. Thank you for sharing that. We talked a little bit about a typical day as an extern, and it's long day, as Chloe mentioned. What is that relationship like between externs and residents at a program? How are you treated by the residents?
I can take that one. It kind of just depends on your resident. Like, they are also a person. If you get a nice resident, they will treat you nicely. And I will say that, like, knock on wood, I've been lucky enough to interact with a lot of nice residents, where they keep you in touch. They give you their phone number the first day, or like during that orientation, if your program has an orientation day, they give you their number and email, and they'll be like, this is the person who you'll be in contact with for the month or this week, and then next week you trade off and stuff. So what you normally do is you text the resident the night before or like the afternoon before, asking them, hey, what is the day like for tomorrow? Is there clinic? Are there cases? How should I prepare? And the residents have always been very kind, and they tell us like, hey, this is the cases for the day, or this is what we're in clinic, this is clinic attire, make sure to bring scissors or something like that. Like, they're very good if you ask them. And I feel like certain programs, they're also looking to see if you are the kind of person to ask that. So it's always good to over prepare than under prepare. Other than that, they'll also give you a little feedback like, hey, this attending really likes this, and this. So make sure this is what you do. Or this attending wrote this paper, make sure you read up on this, or something like that. They'll definitely help you out. But I think the biggest thing is you're in the position to set that relationship up. So if you're kind and you're outgoing and you're tenacious, then there's no reason for that resident to behave otherwise with you. And I think that's on us as the externs to ask those questions and be, like, outgoing and confident there.
Great. Thank you for that. I just want to remind any attendees, feel free to ask any questions within this meeting, or if you feel more comfortable, you can put it in the chat and we'll have our panelists address. One thing I always like to ask is, now that you've gone through it, you've finished externships, if you could give one piece of advice to a student beginning externships, which our third years just went out to begin their externships, or our fourth years, I should say, went out to begin their externships this month. One piece of advice, what would it be?
I think that I would say, and this actually kind of came up during some of my interviews back in January as well, for as much, prowess as you can have academically, you can't teach character and personality, and you can't really underscore enough how important those are. Like, you could be the smartest person in the world, know every question you're asked, and you could walk in there and be super competent in the OR. But if you just if you're not humble, if you're not, empathetic, and if you just don't mesh with the residents, it's just not going to work at the end of the day. Like, yes, academics have a lot of value because, that comes into play with our day-to-day lives and with the work that we're going to be doing. But I think that if you spend a month with a program, at the end of the day, they're going to decide based on, does that person fit in with us? Like, could we work with that person every day for the next 3 years and beyond? And, that was brought up during one of my interviews. Someone was like, we liked you. You were a normal guy. And I was like, cool. Like, that works. And it was something that was brought up a lot as we were preparing to go out on externships. I think that we all can agree that the class above us talked so much about how much value there was in, like, just who you were as a person and just kind of fitting in and, like, being normal, for lack of a better term. And I just think that if I were to give advice to anybody going out on externships, whether it's the class below us who just started or classes to come, it's just, don't forget how valuable that is, because that's going to be a lot more of how you're remembered when it comes to interviews and stuff.
That's great. Any other people want to share one piece of advice?
I'd say always offer to help. And that's not just residents or attending, that's the nurses, the scrub check. 90% of the time they're going to say no, mostly because you're going to slow them down. They have a system, they know what they're doing, they have a particular way to do things, they're used to doing things on their own. It's most of the time they're going to say no, thank you, but it's going to be noted that you offered. And the 10% of the time that they do, let you help, then you get to show them, like, I actually am not, incompetent. I actually do know what I'm doing. You can let me help. And then, they let you do a little bit more next time and a little bit more next time. You know what I mean? And then you get to actually do stuff, especially in some programs that are a little bit more, close-fisted with letting you do a lot of stuff in clinic or in the OR. So offering to help is never going to hurt. Texting whoever's on call before you leave, being like, hey, do you need anything? Like, again, 90% of the time they're gonna be like, no, go ahead, go home, like, have a good night. But it's gonna be noted, like, this person offered to help, 3 out of the 4 days of the week, every single time. And maybe other students aren't doing that, and that kind of gives you a leg up to the program that you really want to go to. So I'd say always offer to help.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Amelia. You finished. Oh, go ahead, Julie. I don't want to cut you off.
Sorry, I was just gonna add 2 pieces of advice. One is always have scissors on you, like, always, because when the attending doesn't have it, he or she looks to the resident. When the resident doesn't have it, he or she looks to you. So it's always good to be prepared. The second piece of advice is you're gonna have days where you're up at like 4 a.m. and you got a round, or you have an early case, or there's just something going on and you need to be up, or you're going to be needing to stay late until like 9-10 o'clock because of, again, whatever is going on. Try your best to just keep a positive attitude. Like, we all get tired, we all get exhausted. I don't know a single person that doesn't like to sleep. So just try your best to, like, not let that attitude show through, and instead show that you want to be there and that you're happy that you're getting this experience. And it's true, a lot of the experiences I got as a 4th year, I don't think I would get again as a resident, because there would be more expectations from me as a resident compared to an extern.
That's great. That's great. I did want to ask a question. Now you've finished these externships, 5, 6, 7 externships, and you're ready for the next step, which is residency match. I'm wondering, Diamond or Chloe, do you mind taking a stab and talking a little bit about residency match ranking, what this process looks like, and then when you all get to go through match week coming up very, very soon?
Yeah, I can take that if that's okay with you, Diamond. So this is a stressful and exciting time. So when we do all of our externships, which are audition rotations, we are kind of keeping in mind what we loved about the program and ultimately where we'd like to be. So after our interviews, we submit a ranking list, and then the programs also submit their ranking list. Then an algorithm is formed in the computer and it spits out our match. So we get on Monday, the 14th, to know that we matched. So if we matched, then we wait until Friday to find out where. For some of the podiatric medical students that do not match, they find out they don't match on Monday, the 14th as well. And then they enter what's called the scramble, or I can't remember what the actual term for it is, Carla, I'm sure you know. But then that is where you find, so that you apply to the programs that have unfilled spots. And you try to secure your position. But you can also celebrate come Friday, March 18th, and everyone celebrates where they go for their residency program. So very exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yes, we'll all be thinking of you and then celebrating with you next week. So it's a very exciting time. This is a really difficult question, but we're getting close to the end, and I want to still leave time for any questions that come up. But you have essentially completed your 4 years at Kent State. If you could describe your experience in just a couple words, what words would you use to describe your experience at Kent State?
Hard, but absolutely fantastic. Like, honestly, like, not even just because this is a panel or whatever. Like, the people who are listening to this, obviously y'all don't know me, but for those of you who do know me, like, I don't lie about this kind of stuff. If I didn't like my experience here, I wouldn't even be on this panel. It was really, really great. I did not regret my decision at all. Even through the hard days, even in the days that weren't great, like, I absolutely do not regret choosing this profession or choosing this school to train me. So
I do have to say, it's not really a word. Well, I guess relationships or friendships, but I've heard time and time again that when you go through medical school, you are bonded to the people that you've gone through this with. It is so hard. There are very high peaks and there are very low lows, but the relationships that I built through this time, like, they'll last. I mean, that's the one best thing. There are a lot of good things, but that is the best thing that really came from the last 4 years.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. Again, feel free. I only have a couple more questions for our panelists, so feel free to put any questions in there. But if you had one thing that you're going to miss the most about this, I think Chloe mentioned the friendships. Anything else you're going to miss about Kent State or even Cleveland that you grew to love over the last 4 years, besides Angela and me?
I definitely agree with the rest of the panel, is the friends, the relationships you made with everyone. We started our first day in the anatomy lab, all with a scalpel in our hand, like, who makes the first cut? And it's your turn to extend this cut to doing surgeries. A lot of us have, went through a lot of trials and tribulations and, through imposter syndrome and everything. I think the best thing for me coming back during core months and things was just to see the other students that I bonded with and how we were all so nervous and anxious going out, and how, like, now we're like the big kids on campus, and we're doing all these crazy things that other people told us about. And I think the main thing is the confidence. A lot of us gained confidence, through the whole situation. Like, we were just kids coming in, and now we're going to be responsible for patients, so it's a lot in that. I think even the whole experience with, externships and clerking, like, you realize how strong you are, how strong you are and how much you can tolerate and how much you can do, like, just so many different situations. So I think mainly, all the people, all the staff, the professors, all the students, attendings and things that we bonded with, definitely going to miss them. I think all of us are not going to miss the Ohio Cleveland weather. That's one thing. We're not going to miss the snow, but I definitely miss these guys. I'm just happy even to see all you guys' faces tonight. So.
No, it's wonderful. Wonderful.
I think
go ahead, Julie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was gonna say, like, to kind of like, I guess, kind of like mesh what Chloe and Diamond both said was, I think I'm gonna miss the familiarity. Like, I'll walk into campus and I'm like, oh, I know where this is. Like, I know what to do. I know who that is. Like, I think that's what I'm gonna miss the most.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to go to Dante's question. He asked, what happens if a student doesn't match into a residency location, and does this happen often? I'll answer the first part. It doesn't happen very often at all, and especially with podiatric medicine the last few years, there's more residency position slots than there are graduates. I'm not sure if anybody in the panel knows how this process works, but if you don't match at the end of match week. There is like what I'm going to call is like the official scramble kind of side thing. So there are programs that continue to have slots open. So it just might not be done as part of the official process for match week, but there's still a lot of conversations going on. But it's very, very rare, especially the most recent few years, for a podiatric medical student not to match in a residency program. And certainly I want to open it up if any of the panelists want to add to that.
The only thing I was going to add, Carla, was that the only real way for you to not match into a residency program is if you decide that you do not like any of your options, and therefore you are basically rescinding from the match program, and you're going to match process, and you're going to try again the following year. And I have heard, stories or rumors that has happened once or twice. Someone didn't match where they wanted to, and then they entered the scramble, and they were given, options, and they didn't like any of their options, and so they just chose not to match. And I don't know what you do at that point. I don't know. I don't know why anyone would do that. I don't know what happens to that person. I don't even know if it's a real story or if it's just a rumor. But basically, you should match. It might not be necessarily like where you want it to go. You know what I mean? It might not be your number 1 choice. It might not be your number 10 choice. But if you want to match, you can match. And I have heard from people who have scrambled that it ended up working out for the best, and they ended up in some really amazing programs, and they were really happy with how it all worked out. Obviously, it's hard to think that way while you're going through the process of scrambling. But I've heard from several people who did scramble in the past that it all worked out. They still got the training. They're still good podiatrists. So I don't think necessarily something to like super worry about. And again, I think like Carla said and someone else said as well, there are more residency spots than there are students. So compared to, our MD and our DO counterparts, you really don't match. And if you really don't match, like I have a friend who entered the match last year, did not match at all, and did a research year while he was waiting to go through match again. And so he's just kind of stuck in limbo, with all this debt from medical school and no real job to pay for it. And so we don't have that problem. If you want to match, you will match as long as you graduate.
I was going to add also, I think all too often students get scared that net matching has to do with your academics. I've heard of 4.0 students not matching on their first round just as much as I've heard of students with lower academics getting some of the top programs. So it's really getting there and wowing them with your personality and your ability to kind of join that team and be part of that team for 3+ years, potentially, if you decide to get a job there, rather than necessarily being the 4.0 student in the class, because every school has a 4.0 or 2 students. So your academics matter, but it's definitely your personality and what else you can bring to the table while you're at that program. Sorry, I've done no externships, but I have all the knowledge, so.
I love it. Great advice, Angela, and a great question, Dante. I will end with this question. So I feel like the last 4 years, the days were long, but the years were super short. And I think before you know it, it's going to be July and you're going to be beginning your residency program. So what are you most looking forward to when you begin residency?
I think I'm still too scared about the fact that I'm actually going to be a doctor in a couple months to think about what I'm excited for. But honestly, I'm really excited for the first time I get to walk in the showroom and introduce myself as Dr. McGuire. Like, I've waited a really long time for this, and I think a lot of us have. And so kind of like that first time when you really like, I'm no longer introducing myself as, hey, I'm Amelia, I'm a 4th year student or a 3rd year, whatever, year in school I am. Like, no, I'm actually the doctor in the room right now, and I get to actually like see a patient and make a decision. Obviously, you're still checking with your attendings and, your first year. Like, it's not like you're doing everything by yourself. There's still, procedures that you really do get to. I'm actually going to be a doctor, and it's crazy because I've been wanting this since I was a little girl, and so it's crazy that it's actually going to happen. So
I am really excited to, next week, I'm excited that I'm going to know where I'm going to go, but I'm really excited to have a team and to have a home, all year. I even chose to do one of my big core rotations in another state. So I'm really excited to belong somewhere and to have camaraderie with my co-residents. That is what I'm most excited for.
That's great.
Aside from a paycheck and finally having a job.
Money. I forgot about that.
No.
Say that again, Paul. Money.
Paul's gonna help the rest of us. He's gonna send some money our way. We all broke.
No, I'm definitely excited to kind of have like, again, a routine like we've had and like responsibility, but really just kind of be taking that next step and having more responsibility, like being kind of one step up in everything you do and continuing to work towards, improving yourself every day and getting closer to that point where, you're practicing on your own, you're teaching others and just continuing to grow.
Great. Diamond or Juhi, any last thoughts?
I have like a mixed emotions. I don't know if it's excitement, like that I'm starting this new chapter of my life, residency, but like I have a bittersweetness where I'm not ready to be at the bottom again. Like I worked so hard to get to fourth year and be like, oh yeah, she's a fourth year student. There's a lot of seniority in that. And now I'm going back to being like a PGY1. So there's that like that excitement plus like bittersweetness.
Yeah. Well said.
I agree with everything everyone said. Stability. I feel like this year I've been on the road because I decided to drive to all my locations, and Diamond drove from coast to coast. So I will be excited to just have, a home again, a stable environment, like somewhere I can just throw my rags, and be okay. Because I've been living out a suitcase in my car for the last year. Also, like Paul said, get paid because the long hours, and to learn from, all the docs, that I, essentially shadow and start, working on my surgical skills and all that. I think the biggest thing that I would say I learned through the whole experience is, to bet on yourself. I feel like a lot of us are, in this field where we have high anxiety, we have professional anxiety, we have imposter syndrome. And I think through this whole thing, bet on yourself and don't lose yourself. Like, I think the main thing is to maintain your identity. Who you were before you enter the 4 years of medical school should be the same person times 10 with, a crown on your head when you leave. Okay. So that's what I think is like my main advice, don't lose yourself, continue to do the things you love to do and just be ready to ride and with a smile on your face because it's a journey.
That was beautiful, Diamond. I feel like that's the perfect way to end this, to bet on yourself and don't lose yourself. Before we wrap up, I'm wondering if our fourth year panelists, if you don't mind, in the chat, could you guys put your name and email addresses just so any of our registrants could contact you if they have a question that's more specifically for you for something that you said or a piece of advice that you shared. That way they can reach out to you directly. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. And I want to thank our registrants for joining us. We'll go ahead and send out this video tomorrow or Friday. That way, in case there was something that one of our panelists said that really spoke to you, can go back and listen to it. And again, feel free to reach out to any of the panelists if you have a question for them. But I want to thank all of our fourth year students, our student doctors who are 2 months away from graduation. So Julie and Chloe and Paul and Amelia and Diamond, thank you guys so much for your time. We really do appreciate it and your entire perspective on your experience on Kent State. So thank you for sharing that with us. Excellent.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, I hope everybody has a great night and we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Great job, oh, they're gone.